Hello and welcome back to another video. After this conversation I had with someone in a video in the comment section, as you can see here and stuff, uh, I think that I should talk about this rather controversial topic. There are many parts of it that we definitely don't even realize that people of color, people who aren't of color, are subconsciously and already applying unto themselves. This isn't gonna get crazy like that vegan teacher. She's just, we all know that she's crazy and wrong about this stuff. But yeah, this will get interesting. Don't take what I say as absolute truth. There's always more in-depth and personal parts of it, of not only Americans but everyone of color, not of color, just in general across the world who have experienced this sort of thing. So yeah, the first problem is that of just terms, just the words we use. African American, terms like that, where Asian American, I'm not sure exactly, but I've heard that term thrown around before, but like, it seems wrong, you know? There are so many different groups, countries in Asia. There are like 48 or something near that. But like, yeah, and like, technically, if you want to get technical, there are 30 million Russians who are on the Asian continent. That part of Russia and where they live is part of the Asian continent. So technically, you can say a citizen from that part of Russia, in coming to the U.S., is an Asian American. Of course, we generally say that when we're referring to someone of Chinese, Japanese, or Korean descent coming here, Filipino, people who quote unquote look like that. But the problem is that includes Indian, and remember, India, there are there's a whole litany. The subcontinent of India is a whole litany, a whole hodgepodge of different religions, cultures, ethnicities, that us using the term Asian American just sort of merges that on the side with what we know about China, which is the main place where we think everyone who is Asian comes from. But remember, technically, if you're from Israel, if you're from the Middle East, you're technically Asian, quote unquote. So I think there's a problem with the term Asian American being used in such a limited and broad context, because the subcontinent of India, like I said, its own world. Every country in and of itself is like its own world with its own groups. There are 3 million Chinese Muslims. Islam. I'm not exactly sure of the right terms. I don't want to offend anyone, but like, you know what I'm saying. There are Pakistan, it's India, China, all these places. They aren't all the same in religion, not the same in looks, none of that. So maybe we should not even say, for like those statistics things, which is, I used to be into that sort of stuff. Like, I used to read it when I was like in way younger. I would go like, oh, this is interesting and stuff. But like now, it is interesting, but the terms, it's just offensive. honestly. And like I said, I'm not sure how many different ethnicities and groups, but yeah, it's crazy. And I can't remember where, but I did read that there was actually a group of Buddhists living in Russia. So yeah, like I said, it just mixes everywhere. Indonesia, like it's part of Asia, so Asia? No, that is wrong. Because remember, there are Arabic roots in that too. For those of you who are very well read in history, you know that um, Islam made its way across into China, which is how it's over there in China. It's over there in small amounts in China. It's over there in Indonesia. It's over in that area. India to an extent. It's mixed all across there. And that's how, and it reached out into Africa too. And to more of an extent than people think, it's not just like Egypt or the Middle East. It is into parts of Africa, Mali, for example, which is where I'm gonna awkwardly and bluntly transition into the term African American after this. But yeah, Mali was at one point. It's like its own culture and stuff, and that it's still there and all. But like Islam spread out and reached there too. It reached all across Asia, Africa. So terms like Asian American, it's too broad. It's, if you think about what Asia, the continent, and you say Asian American, think about how many different types of people you could possibly be referring to. I could be referring to someone who's from India or China or Japan, and people. Another thing is that people always, or not always, but people a lot of times assume that just because they have a certain look, they're from China, and they say, oh, they're Chinese. No, it's not just China. I mean, sure, China does have a lot of people. We're not going to say they don't, but like, there's Japan, which is its own entire culture. For those of you who say, every time you see a person who looks that way and you just say, oh, a Chinese person, well, and you're an anime fan, well, you should kind of be rethinking about that, because anime, one of the best types of shows and of all time, is from Japan. It's not from China, it's from Japan. So maybe everyone should think about this sort of stuff. They should think about maybe school should be teaching that sort of thing, because I had a friend who was Vietnamese, not gonna say their name, but yeah, they were Vietnamese, and so when you think about it, there are a whole bunch of countries there which have dozens of their own cultures, dialects, similar to how Americans have that southern accent and all that, and stuff like that, their own dialects. It's still the same language, but it's in a different form. It's for all intents and purposes its own language. I mean, to an extent, because there are new terms in that dialect. I'm not fluent in Vietnamese. I don't know Vietnamese, but you know what I'm saying. It is way, way, way too broad a term. We should think about that. Not everyone is from places. Not everyone's from China. Not to downplay that or anything, because in the past there was a law passed that prohibited Chinese males and females, Chinese people, from becoming citizens, but they still had to pay taxes and stuff, and they still got badly treated by Americans. I can't speak about that because I don't have that sort of personal experience. But yeah, and as well as that, there is even like Japanese people. They were in during that time in World War II for short but very, very forgotten, unfortunately, period in history. They were put in camps, and so it kind of makes you really think. It's like we know that those Axis powers were definitely crazy on the evil wrong side, but like it makes you think how much better were the Americans, because racism was an underlying problem for decades and stuff. So I mean, I'm not saying America was as bad as Germany and the other Axis powers at that time. What I'm saying is that America certainly had its own flaws and problems, and due to the freedom of speech and the lack of protection from that sort of racist action, it definitely could have. Some people definitely would have said if they had the wrong. Some people certainly had the wrong experience to where it's like, I'm not sure, because it's it's to where like you ask, was my home country that much better? So now I'm gonna get into African American racism and underlying problems. I am African American, so I am gonna get very personal into this. I'm gonna keep it PG as so I'm not gonna say any of those terms, those derogatory terms. If I see them in the comments, you better be referring to it historically, purely historically. Make sure you write like an apology or a quick forewarning, and yeah. So another problem, quite simply, is African American difficulty struggle. I'm not even gonna get into. I'm not going to get into slavery and that sort of stuff because that deserves its own entire video. Slavery in general, not just U.S. but everywhere, deserves its own video. But its own series, really. But I am going to talk about some issues. So, the first issue, as always, is the term African American. Like, why? No, it doesn't. Yes. Now, not to say that if you consider yourself an African American, it's like you can take pride in that, but at the same time, a term like that, just think about your lineage and how, remember, Africa has at least 50 countries, but that isn't even the big thing. The big thing is that Africa has thousands of different ethnicities, groups like that. For all intents and purposes, those groups are their own countries, really. They're bound by country borders and stuff, yeah, but they speak their own languages, they have their own culture, own religion. And so saying African American or black, it's just too broad of a term. And then yeah, because it's like you're reducing a race, and it's like you're reducing a person to such a binary code, when, remember, there are people of Latino, Latina, from that descent. There are African Americans. There are people from India, Asia, from the whole spectrum of Asia. It's it's just derogatory, simply disgusting, in my opinion, how these terms reduce it to just you're either black or you're either white, and because some of some of the friends I had were mixed, and like you're bound to meet someone who is mixed, and so what does that make them? I am excuse me if I'm being blunt, but I'm certainly not going to go up to my friend who's mixed and say, "Oh, you're gray," because that's not how it works. Their skin isn't gray. Calling them gray is just it just sounds weird. It's offensive. So it should really be thought about, because if you're reducing it to such a binary system, then technically, by your own binary, pitiful, quote unquote logic, they're gray, which is it. Like I said, just sounds rude, stupid, and so another problem is the current racism. BLM. Asian Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter sort of thing. And then, of course, there are people saying all lives matter. And if you're speaking from a perspective of an extremely small minority, yes, I get that. I get where you're coming from. But, like, if you're not of these minorities, it's like, and you're saying this just to say, like, white lives matter, black lives matter, all that, well, think about this. Were they treated like they mattered? For the past millennia, were they treated like they mattered? So you can say all lives matter all you want, but that's not really going to look at the vast majority whom are getting bullied and picked on for being of just any different ethnicity, and terms that just are limiting, because technically this is gonna get into being Caucasian and stuff like that, but technically if you're quote unquote white, then technically if you're white, that means that includes people who are Asian, whom I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that a Chinese citizen wouldn't say they're like a European citizen. They have their own lives, their own culture. So yeah, the term white on its end already taps into a massive cauldron of the Asian community, which it just shouldn't even be like relating to. And here's some really it's bad. It's gonna look bad. If you're Christian, you may take a different stance. You may be shocked. You may be offended. So just a forewarning. But yeah, let's see. Oh, right. The Bible. Single-handedly the most sold book, the most sold set of letters, honestly, on the planet. There may actually be more copies than there are people. I'm not than there are Christians. I'm not sure. But yeah. The Bible, I'm not going to say whether I believe in it or not. I'm not going to reveal any personal facet of my life to that extent, but let's just put it this way. It's not listened to. For people who are believers of the who believe in that faith, Christianity, you should be asking yourselves, do I listen to the Bible? And possibly this may be a deeper question, should you? So, the problem with the problem that unfortunately arose, and this is gonna get into slavery, so this is definitely a warning. This is gonna get into slavery on the Christian and the Islam side, so this is your warning. But yeah, there's a problem. Ignorance. See, the Bible, believe it or not, was, you guessed it, changed by humans. You see, people were like, well, when slavery first started, people who read the Bible and stuff were like, well, the Bible says to treat your neighbor like you treat yourself. So, we can't be doing this. And so, I've heard, and so there are some issues such as, they retconned it for all intents and purposes. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but they retconned religion itself to where like it was a curse of some sort, and God ended up like changing their skin and to where like because they sinned or something. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure to of how it goes, but something along those lines, and that's how they explain it. And so it's the other way around according to science, evolution, and all that. And B, even if that was true, would that be right though? Now back then they could have justified it by saying, well, in all fairness, this is what God said, and we do exact. Back then, for all intents and purposes, the Christian God and the God of Judaism and Islam, it's two separate individuals, because one was willing to be more direct. Not to say the current view of him isn't, but he was different. And so this one was this version allowed forgiveness, all that sort of stuff, but more direct and severe with the punishments. But like the one now, it believes in second chances and stuff like that, almost to the extent of, like I said, to where it's sort of two different beings in a sense. And so I was thinking, by the logic of being able to be forgiven of one's sins, even if God punished you a while back, because technically Adam and Eve did this sin, so, and you're still trying to save yourselves. So by applying even the most basic of logic and the current change, you can easily switch it around. You could easily say that, well, they should be forgiven, like they should be introduced to that, and that was apparently ignored. Then again, logic wasn't very common back then, or even today, but still. And then, on a much smaller note, which um, which goes back to European Christianity back then. It was just wrong. Um, see, the problem with it is, uh, they conquered people by the sword, blood, gore. It was either you die or you join the religion, which you can't just change religion like that. And so, yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, because all of a sudden it goes from God said He forgives us to, well, you either join or die, and that's not how conversion necessarily works. I mean, then again, they could have just ignored the New Testament entirely, and so like I was saying, there was a lot of retconning. I literally don't know what other term to use, but for all intents and purposes, this was a retconning these other religions and beliefs. Like the Norse belief and mythos, when when their kings were like, "Hey, we want to join Christianity," and a lot of the native people were like, no, we still believe in these old deities and stuff." And so what Christianity did was like, oh, those guys existed, they just weren't deities or anything, they weren't supreme, they were just like wizards or something along those lines. And that's when it got weird with, like, they were like, no, they're magical elves or demons that, like, I'm not sure which, but like, for one writer, all of the Greek and all of the Greek deities and some of the Egyptians deities maybe were in Heck, or the underworld, and I'm pretty sure for the pinned comment it'll say, because I'll look that up later for the editing and stuff. But yeah, they try retconning, writing away. It's like, you were not worshiping deities or anything. You were worshiping demons and stuff, and or something like the Norse mythos in particular, because Santa Claus, that arises from Odin, which is a different being from a different religion, which, if I'm being honest, they could have either A, left alone and slowly over time let it die down, simmer out, and then maybe tried to spread the word. Of course, that's not how they did things. They never did peace, so it was by the sword. And or B, you just say, oh, right. I forgot about this. But for Ragnarok and stuff, there was some Christian remaking of it. Like I said, this isn't the exact wording, because I just don't have. I'm not near my secondary device that would enable me to look that stuff, double check. But like, it was where, like, they said, oh yeah, that stuff happened, but in this new universe that those two new people made were Adam and Eve, and that there was a one greater God above even these guys, who was over above all this and surveying. And yep, that's Christianitizing. We'll have to create a term for when something like this happens. And no, it can't be retcon because that sounds wrong. But yeah, a lot of this stuff is based on stuff that happened for that last part of the religious discussion. It was based on that a lot of this was based on statistics. A lot of it was made from my personal opinion. The numbers and stuff aren't going to be all exact, so don't go into the comment section and decondescending like that and say, well, actually, it's this many countries or something like that. Oh, Africa has 51, I think. But even still, yeah. I have a script here. Let me just check the paper. But according to it, which page is this on? There are 2,000 languages spoken in Africa. So, 1,500 to 2,000. So, I'm good. It says two of my sources for the writing. It says that two of them are 2,000, are in the 1,500 to 2,000 range, and one said 2,000. So, even assuming we go with 2,000, there are like 6,909 known languages, but let's be honest, there are a bunch of languages that have been forgotten or we just don't know about because those cultures were just history in general is too biased to look at them. That needs its own video. Yeah. So that means assuming it is like assuming we have exactly that exact number. Let's see. I think my notes talk about Asia, the amount of languages spoken in Asia too. I think it's, but just remembering off the top of my head, I think it's like 2,300, that range. Yeah, it seems like it's 2,300. Huh. I guess I didn't need the script. So that means, assuming we do some quick old math and downplay the amount of languages spoken and lowball the amount we know that are spoken in these other places. That means 62.3%, that's just rounded, of all languages on Earth right now spoken are from either Asia or Africa. And we know that there are like 6 billion people from there too. I know it's not exactly 6 billion, closer to 5.5 billion, but still, that means that even assuming, again, we downplay some numbers and we do 5.5 billion and 8 billion, like I said, assuming we downplay that math, dude, we end up getting 68.75% of all people are from just those two continents. So that means those terms like Asian American and African American, it includes the possibility of like referring to like a whole litany of people. There are 68.75%. 68.75% of people, if you were to just say they were African or Asian, you have the possibility of offending them. So, yeah. So, Also, I know, statistics and all say that America is the best country. Personally, I'm not gonna not say that, but then again, I'm not gonna say that either. There's no best country, quote unquote. There are countries that are exceedingly good in some aspects, but there's no best country. Yeah. Overall, I'd have to say that's the end of the video. I know this is way longer than anything I've ever made before. If you liked this, go check out my till now second to latest video. You can ask any sort of question there. I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. Philosophical questions, paradoxes in particular, I will definitely try. I definitely should be able to answer. But yeah. Bye.